This is a freshly printed model, which in most cases you would use a primer before you start painting it. Today, this is Groundeffected. My name is your dad, and in this video we're going to answer the question of, do I need primer for my model? The short answer is yes, you technically do need primer before you paint your models, but there is a different answer to this question, and that is no, you don't actually need it. It depends, I guess, but I'm going to prove in this video that you don't need primer to be able to paint your models, and the paint will still stick to your 3D printed models as long as a few things are adhered to during this process. First and very foremost is that your product or model or item or whatever the thing is needs to be completely clean and have absolutely no residue on it. That's technically true for primers as well. Many people probably don't know who this character is. That depends on your age and perhaps where you lived. But essentially what this is the original Just Stop Oil Man, Captain Planet. And we all know the guy with the heart power really got screwed on the deal. My first call to action is going to be to mount everything, and I'm going to shove sticks and these little clampy things into every single orifice in these models that I have made when I was printing them, in order to make sure that I could get a good clean inside of them. And obviously you can tell that I've sanded them as well, all the bits that needed to be sanded, some of the little leftover support marks. So I've done all of that, and now the process is going to be to put a little handle on them so I can paint them without touching them with my hands and rubbing the paint all over the place. And now would be a really good time for me to mention that this video was sponsored by Nice X Collectibles. This is a new Patreon on the block, and if you don't understand what the Patreons of STLs is for, then this is where you can get models just like this one. And in this video I'm painting their release for this month, which is Captain Planet. If you would like this model or anything similar to this, you should probably check them out in my description down below. But before you do that, check out how I am now painting directly on the resin, and I'm not using any primers at all. There is no magic, there's no foolery, I'm just painting directly on the resin. And this is for one reason, and that reason is because the resin is actually quite porous. It absorbs quite a lot of the paint, to be honest. And in fact, what you may notice is that the colors seem to appear a little bit duller than what they would on top of a primer, even though it is a lighter color than a black primer. And that is again because the resin is porous, but because of those little micro pores, those are tiny little grasping hands that hold onto the paint and don't allow it to come off. So not only does these little holders and paintbrushes shoved up in orifices help me to hold them when I paint, but it also helps me to dry things, because I can stick them in any hole that I can find and just allow them to dry while I don't touch them, and they can dry all on their own. And this is what I'm going to do right now. Now, if you are power painting and trying to get stuff done really fast, you're gonna need one of these, and this is my trusty, very dirty hairdryer, which I have definitely not stolen from my wife. And that's what you would use to blow everything, to dry it a little bit quicker if you're in a hurry. But in this case, I'm not in such of a hurry, because I have other things to do while I wait for this to dry. And as we have already got all of our base coats down, it's time to add some shades to this model. And by shades, what I actually really mean is some shadows. I normally don't really paint this way around. It actually really depends on the type of model that I'm painting, but in this case I actually had no idea what color this guy is, so I'm just gonna go with shades first, because I know how to do the reds. It's the blue of his skin that I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna make yet, but for the reds I'm gonna spray some washes into the shadows of that in order to create some depth of it. Now that I have a nice dark shadow on the legs, I'm gonna bring it up to a very nice, I don't know what color this is. Aquamarine, is it? I don't really know. But also I managed to spill it, so there is a bit of a moment where I need to clean that up, and once I'm done cleaning that up, I get back to painting Aquamarine Man. I mean Captain Spandex. Sorry. This is a real test though of if the paint is actually sticking without a primer, and that is to put masking tape, because masking tape is sticky. I'm not sure if you realize this, but sticking something that is sticky onto your fresh painted surface and then pulling it off is a really true test, a scientific test of whether your paint has truly adhered to the surface. But you saw that I masked it, and that is for one specific reason. This allows me more freedom with my airbrush to just spray almost as if I don't care, to get those glorious juicy highlights on the most thickest Captain Planet you've ever seen in your life. Now, as I have a lot of time crunch and limit to the things that I do over here on this channel, I've kind of debated whether to do this or not. But obviously, I lost the debate with myself and I ended up doing this. So I used this chrome gold from Montana, which takes 400 days to dry, to paint the golden parts on the model. And whilst I let that dry for 400 days, I went back to painting some details on the rest of the suit. I took some wash, Caribou Crimson specifically, and I painted that into the crevasses on all of the red parts because this made it look a little bit more interesting. Also, this model fits really tight. This is a good thing because I didn't need to use any magnets. However, it did mean that little bit of extra paint needed to be sanded off or scraped off before I could get the parts to fit back together again after I had painted them. You can see me placing everything together just to check that the fit is good, and this is about the time where this paint of the chrome type was not dry, but I took the chance, and lucky me, I never stuck my finger in it. Every single time I paint this chrome paint, no matter what happens, I always seem to put my finger in it for some reason, and luckily this time I didn't do that. I had to scrape a little bit more of the nubs. Again, you can see I'm just taking this off, all the paint off. Literally the new paint that I put in, it was so close to fitting that 1mm of paint just didn't let it fit anymore. But again, the press fit on this model is actually really good. I didn't use any magnets on this model at all, just because the press fit was so nice and tight. Once I was sort of satisfied that this gold was dry, and it really wasn't dry, so let's not get into any semantics about when you should or shouldn't paint over this, but I basically took some black and very carefully painted the black lines over the top of the planet on Captain Planet's suit. And now I do have a question. Considering his face is the same color as his body, is this guy wearing a bikini, or is he just wearing the same color suit as his skin tone? I'm not really sure, but while we ponder that, let's paint this magical power that is coming out of the rings that is part of the base. This was another debate that I lost within myself over whether do I mask this or not. And as you can obviously tell by watching the footage that you are watching, I chose not to mask this part at all. And I felt like if any of the overspray went into one of the other powers, it didn't really matter too much because technically they would all be casting each other's lights all across the place. So I kind of freeballed it. That is a fancy artistic term for using your airbrush with no care towards the overspray. Yes, type that in the dictionary right now. It is called freeballing, and I freeballed the living daylights out of this base, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually really happy with the results of it. It really came out really nice. And once I was happy with the colors, it was time to give it a lovely shiny gloss so that they looked as beautiful as they possibly could. Okay, so I have managed to obviously get the power stuff that comes out of the rings done. I've got the body done, and the glorious happily me dropped one of these. So basically I have to reprint this, and for some reason I don't actually know why, but there is some very not good. And the other thing is, this base, which actually goes underneath there, which is the rings on top of the earth, has been cut in a better way than this. So I'm going to reprint that too, which is now busy packing files, which is taking a while for some reason. And I'm going to reprint that, but it is now currently 8 o'clock in the night on a Saturday. It's time for me to go home because my wife will not be happy if I just live in my shop. Actually, to be honest, she probably would be happy if I just went and visited now and then and just stayed in the shop out of the way. But it is definitely too late for me to carry on now, so I'm going to put that print on and I'm going to go home and refresh tomorrow on Sunday, and we will get this model finished for sure by then. Good morning. It is Sunday morning. I don't know what time it is, but I'm going to carry on with this model if everything is ready because remember yesterday I put some stuff on for print. So let's go look at what's happening in the printers. As it turns out, I was perhaps just a little ambitious. I shouldn't keep that open because it's cold. And basically, there is still a lot left to do. And I was hoping that I could get actually started on this the minute that I got into work, but I've got some time to wait yet still. Obviously there's not much that I can do until that print is done, so with the power of video magic, you won't have to wait, but I will. And once the wait was over, it was totally worth it because now it was so much easier to paint the rest of this base, and I went with earth blue. It's a color of earth, I think. I don't really know actually. I just went with blue and then a lighter blue and then another lighter blue, and I painted the lands on top of the earth with a light green, and all of these were Vallejo colors, so it doesn't really actually matter. If I'm being totally honest with you, a dark blue and a light blue is going to do it. A light green, and then the next step I'm going to spray a slightly darker green into the center of all the lands on top of the earth, and this is going to make it look a little bit cool. And once it is really cool looking, I'm going to get back to spraying those heads that I had broken when I was being an idiot. Also, during this time, I know that this paint is going to need days to dry, so I quickly sprayed the base coat on top of the rings. And working on the face, this time because I'm working on them on their own, I can put a little bit more effort into them, which I guess actually worked out a bit better because I was able to make the airbrush a little bit smoother on the faces. I then did the usual black inside of the eyes in order to make them a little bit darker, and I painted his really awesome green eyebrows. There is also a green on top of his head because he has a really cool Malay. This guy was created around the time when I was a youngster. So this perhaps is giving away my age a little bit, but at this time, this kind of hairstyle was really cool. I'm noticing that it is coming back a little bit, so maybe in the future you might see someone with a green Malay and think you've met Captain Planet. Let's stop getting distracted and talk about how I painted the rim around his neck, because again, I don't actually know if this is part of the suit, the bikini top that he's wearing, or if it is neck collar. I don't know. Never mind. I then used that bright green that I used to paint the lands to spray in the tips of his hair to get a little bit more highlights in it, and then I washed it with a green wash to draw that back a little bit so it wasn't too bright. I also painted Megos purple into his mouth because for some reason he doesn't have a blue tongue like you would imagine he does. He has a pink mouth, so I painted it pink, and that is what ended up happening. Once I was done with that, I highlighted some parts on the mouth, and then I started working on the teeth by adding a couple of deck tan teeth all over the place. Yes, I mentioned the word deck tan. I used that same deck tan to paint his eyeballs too, so let's just carry on with life. Once I was done with that and everything was dried, it was time to put some Sagor brown down because I'm pretty sure he has brown eyes. If he doesn't have brown eyes, it's tough. I have the only brown-eyed Captain Planet, if that is the case. Once I was done with that Sagor brown, I added a little bit of a lighter brown and obviously a black pupil, and then it was time for me to tackle these rings. I don't even know how I managed to get through this without pulling out the small amounts of hair that I have left. This chrome paint effect is great in some cases, but in 99.9% of the cases, it is terrible to work with. I did not enjoy doing this. I used a normal chrome paint, just a normal Vallejo chrome paint as a base coat first, just to have something to stick to, and then I laid that chrome looking stuff as thick as possible to make it look as shiny as possible. It is not perfect if you look up close, so don't look very close. When I do the turnaround shots later, please close your eyes when you see that part. I then glued Captain onto his base and called the model done. I just want to say a massive thank you to NiceX Collectibles for sponsoring this video, as well as a thank you to my patrons. If you didn't already know, over on Patreon, I post every day almost at this point I post a lot of behind the scenes and work in progress, as well as quite a few exclusive videos for the patrons only. If you're interested in this, check out my Patreon down in the description below. This is a great time for you to also leave some words in the little square box that YouTube gives you for some words. And if you didn't like anything you saw in this video, then it's time for you to actually f off.